introduce them. As you all are aware, we have a city-owned property committee, and it's comprised of members of finance, public works, IT, law, parks, human resources, and community development. We meet monthly to talk about these city-owned properties that may come and go onto the list. We talk about policies and procedures. Today, we just wanted to kind of share some of our progress and kind of the public-facing stuff, so that all of you, when you're in the community helping others in regards to city-owned properties, you could help us point them into the right direction. So first, I'll have Chris Meeks show what we have available on our website, and then we'll follow up with Ben Lozano in IT to show off our new web app.
So just want to start with kind of a real quick update on a lot of the cases that we've seen come forward in the last couple of years between 2018 and 2019. So we've had 42 cases heard by the council on basically about 42 different properties. 18 of those have been sold, plus the 3 that were just approved to be sold to Mr. McKinsey at the last meeting. So as soon as he gets the subdivision plat done, the final plat for that, those will be sold as well. 2 are pending, plus the 6 for Mr. Yeager that is on the agenda for this evening. 2 denied, 7 withdrawn, and 4 expired. So a lot of the withdrawn cases those are ones that they were approved, but for a price higher than what was offered by the applicant. They were offering below. We want to get the assessed values, so that's why those are withdrawn. The 4 expired. Some of those kind of a similar situation where the applicant just didn't want to pay for that after the case was heard. And in the last year, we've done a couple changes to the process, notably the addition of the administrative fee and the 10% down payment for any new property. So no pushback from applicants on those. They're all really accepting. They understand why we want that. And we're also limiting the time frame that they have to purchase most properties. Usually, historically, it had been about 6 months. We're down to about 60 days, and those are working out pretty well. So applicants are coming in; they're ready to pretty much go with those. Just to kind of give you an overview of what applicants see now. So if you go to the City Council Bluffs website and go to the How Do I link, just hover over that, click the Purchase Surplus Property. This is kind of this is the main web page now. What we have is just a kind of a quick overview of how properties are acquired, most of them obviously through the 657A process. And we also have kind of a rundown of what is required for each application. So the 10% down payment plus the $50 administrative fee. And just notes that the city has the ability to either add different conditions onto a property if an application comes in to sell it, or we have the opportunity to kind of split that in half and offer it to one neighbor to fix a nonconformity, or to kind of make our choice of what that best process is, who the best buyer for that property is going to be. We also have a link to the application on here for anybody to print and fill out in their own time and then drop it off to us. One notable change that's fairly recent as well is between the clerk's office and community development. What we're going to do is, historically, applications have been going to Jody. They've gotten more difficult with the addition of the down payment on there, so we're just going to take them to the community development department office, and then we'll forward it on to Jody for receipt filing, and it'll come to you. So. And I'd say in the future, kind of moving forward, as we continue to evolve a little bit, maybe this could be a PDF that's filled out online and sent me an email, so it's not even something that we have to print out anymore. But that's moving down the line, so we'll certainly work on that. But kind of our latest evolution is probably the online map, so I will turn it over to Ben to kind of explain that to show that.
Hello. That was my first time in front of you guys, so take a second to introduce myself. My name is Ben Lozano. Been the GIS administrator here for about 2.5 years. Former professional musician, now I'm a GIS administrator. So if you want the longer story, come down to my office. I'll talk your ear off about that. So when I was brought on, one of the priorities that Wendy Schultz had for me was to help with the advancement and the streamlining of the city-owned property process. And when I came on, there was a lot of information in a bunch of different islands across the different departments that were working with the city-owned property process. And last 2 years, we've been working on consolidating all that information into our GIS database. And the result of that you can see here, which is our new online portal for the public to be able to see surplus properties on whatever devices they have hooked up online, so whether they're desktop computers, tablets, or phones. So under the purchase surplus property, down at the bottom you'll see the link. You click here, and that takes you to the web portal. And once this lines up, you'll see a splash page kind of welcoming you to the city-owned property site. Now, right off the bat, if you are comfortable using the web app, you can go and click the View Map button here, or you can download the PDFs that were split up into the two types, the buildable and non-buildable. So the two links you can see here, so you click either one of these, and then it will auto-download onto your tablet or phone or computer and have just a straight drop-down list of all of the available properties for purchase. So, back here, click on View Map to access the map, and it will take you to just a base view of the City of Council Bluffs. And on the upper right, you can see 3 predefined queries. One for surplus property buildable with restrictions, and surplus property non-buildable. Do we want to go through the different designations for those, or?
If you could just show us one for sure.
Okay.
General enough.
So if we wanted to see the surplus properties buildable, all you'd have to do is just click on that particular query. And the map zooms to those available properties, and you can see that they get listed here off to the right. Now, I can't quite see, I don't have my glasses. What does that number say? 15, okay. So that we do have 15 available properties for purchase that are fully buildable. And you see those displayed here as the green dots. And again, you have all those properties listed just like you would on the PDF over here on the right. If you wanted to zoom into any of those particular properties, you just click on that feature. It'll take you right to it. And then it pulls up that same information that you would see on the PDF. And if you want a little bit more in-depth information, there's a link under the assessor. So you click on that and it automatically takes you to Pod County's assessor page for that particular property and gives you all of the in-depth information you need for that. And that same process can be used for all different categories. So if you go back to tasks, exit out, if you want to see all of the surplus properties that are not buildable.
Is there, maybe I missed it, is there a price on there?
Yeah.
Yes. Some of them we don't have defined. We have to go through with our meeting and kind of put those on. So like this one right at the top, this one doesn't have an assessed value. So we'll have to go in and add that in and kind of go through the assessor's records to find what the latest, the most recent assessed value for that property is.
Gotcha.
But yeah, each one of these properties, we wanted to kind of make it as simple as possible. So we just have like the address, the status, and the tax bit and the assessor link on there. So again, I can't quite see. You can see the assessed value there at the bottom.
Yeah.
I can't make out what that number is. And then all of this is tied directly to our internal GIS database. So whenever there are updates, I have a script that runs that takes that current information and pushes it out to this web app. And just for the sake of transparency, all the users that can access this map, you can see at the bottom, that has the most recent updated date on there. So again, I can't see. I need my glasses, but I think that says 6/18. So there hasn't been any motion between then and now, and so it will automatically update when updates are made available.
So like if there was ones that are pending or whatever you call it, then they are not on this list. So if they like get withdrawn, then they would just pop back up on here.
When they were withdrawn, yes, but while they were in the pending process, I believe they will stay on here. Is that correct?
I believe they do.
Okay. So once the sale has been finalized, that's where the property is removed. And there are instances where the properties are in our possession, but there are certain circumstances that don't allow it to be put on the surplus property right away. And so if we would look in our internal database, you might see the numbers have a little bit of discrepancy between them. But in some instances, that would be because like the PD or fire wanted to use the property for training or
Right.
certain situations like that.
That's super
And
nice,
that's
yeah, that's really nice.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, that's really nice.
And that's about it. I mean, it's, one of the goals was to kind of make it as simple as possible. And if you were to access this same application on your phone, you would have all the same functionality. And obviously the map screen would be smaller, but all of the list and being able to zoom in and go to the assessor link, that functionality is all there.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That's a big improvement from where we were a couple of years ago. That's really nice. Before it was hard for people to even really know for sure what we had available.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions on the map?
Cheryl has a question.
Sorry.
Or a statement. Do you want to comment?
I noticed some of the buildable properties, hopefully this will change with the floodplain study for Indian Creek, but we're in Kingsville-Tinley neighborhood. And even though it might be buildable for zoning and setback requirements, they would need flood insurance if they're financing it, not paying cash. And then also they would have to adhere to the elevation, which would, to take it out of the floodplain, which could be 6 feet, 8 feet higher than what the ground
I think
is.
if somebody's interested, we would tell them that before.
So I was
once
wondering,
they-
yeah, just to alleviate some, communication on.
They're better, well, I'll guarantee you that.
They're gonna have to do their own due diligence, so
Right.
maybe, it's sort of not your problem, but maybe it would be nice to.
Yeah.
Well, what we
look at
could
it.
do, sorry, I don't mean to
Oh,
cut
sorry,
you off.
yeah.
Some of the information that we have in our database is whether or not these properties are in certain floodplain areas. So, improvements we can make in the future, when you click on any of these properties, we could put that information in the pop-up that comes out. So if
I
there
would
are,
advise against it. A couple of cities have gotten sued in the last year or so because they were putting that on there, and then there was an expectation that you were responsible to tell them, and so if it got missed or the link wasn't there, then it was the city's fault. So I think less is more.
okay,
I don't wanna be on the, and some of those, they're not that easy to tell if they are or are not in a flood zone. Sometimes they're right on the line, sometimes part of the property is, part of it isn't. Wouldn't wanna see us put ourselves out there like that.
Yeah.
And every zone is different too, so then that would be
Right.
a miscommunication of, zone X versus zone A,
Yeah.
Yeah.
what.
Somebody inquires and we have the information.
It probably wouldn't hurt to have a disclaimer on there that by buildable, we're referring to certain things, we make no warranty or, the legal.
Right, we probably should.
I'm sure they probably do.
Like on the front page where you click, yes, I use it, you agree to those terms and conditions. It's
Right.
maybe something they can work with the city attorney. Yeah, nobody reads it, it doesn't matter if you read it, because you're held to it by clicking on it, I don't read it, it doesn't matter.
I know, I
Click
just-
on it,
it's like-
you agree to it.
I mean, to me, this just kind of reminds me of the
Yeah.
realtor site. I mean, it's like you're on
Doesn't matter.
realtor.com, and that doesn't have all that information necessarily. So you find what you like, then you research if it's gonna
Right.
work or not. So I mean, that's kind of, this is just showing you that there are options, and then people can go from there. But I mean, that's
Yeah, they're gonna.
definitely if we had that info, I'm assuming you guys would share it with them
Yeah,
when they're
and
talking to you. But
all that information, we have all that in our database and in our internal city-owned property applications. So as the process goes forward, that information would come up and would be addressed.
You might though, I'd encourage you to talk with the city attorney's office as to a disclaimer when they click through. Might help. Because even if people don't read it, they're held to it.
but this is just to show them, because then they still come in with their application and talk with community development. So
Right.
this is just to show them it's available.
I know, it's just sometimes when people make a foolish financial decision, they don't want to blame themselves. And then they want to sue the government, but we're not, it's not our job to make the business decisions. But it will help that they should do their own, and I'm not against helping, not me malign that whatsoever, but I think it'd be helpful to point out that we're not making representations about anything other than this is something we're selling, willing to sell, it is what it is.
Because right now your house kind of buildable, well, it is buildable, but you have to.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand that, that's true. They'll think that suddenly is a guarantee that everything is,
Just meets the requirements for zoning to, the site's big enough to
Right.
build on.
yeah. And it wouldn't hurt to say that. If people don't read it, then they don't read it, I guess.
And we can certainly bring that up at our next meeting, and this application is fully scalable, so down the line, if we wanna make those changes to either add information to the application, take information away, that's we can make those edits as needed.
Great.
I think this is great.
This is fantastic.
Great job.
Thank you.
Any other
Thank you.
questions for Ben?
It's really
Kind
good.
of an aside, but at noon we had a RegBri meeting and the people from RegBri were there and Ashley and Ben worked on the map and the director of RegBri was kind of gobsmacked at the map. He said, wow, I've never seen a map with that kind of detail in my life.
That's awesome. Good job, you guys.
Thank you, sir.
That's super good.
I think this comes out of, we had that visioning session, what was it, 8 years ago, almost
Long
7,
time ago.
long time ago. And that was one of the things that Sharon was really advocating for. Technology wasn't quite to this point back then, to say the least.
His map on RegBri, if you know the name of the group, I think you can click on it and it tells you right where they're camping, so it's
Oh, that's
pretty
cool.
amazing.
Now he's gonna show it.
You wanna see it? Embarrassed me in my first time here. Bear with me a second.
This is a far change from our spreadsheet that nobody
Yeah,
even
yeah.
had any access to, that was like tucked away in.
Yeah, it's coming
Got
out.
it in my back pocket right
Remember, there's like sheets of like just stuff.
Yeah.
Remember, we didn't originally know what we owned.
That's what I mean, and then we had the spreadsheet was like a big thing, so it's definitely.
But looking at it, I like to see that, you know, on the buildable list, there were only 15 on there.
Right away.
That's a big change.
Yeah.
Pretty happy with that. I don't think we're getting properties as quickly as we were on
now.
any other, so
The
that's
county's
nice.
probably more attributable to that.
Mhm.
There we go. Okay, so here's the main Council Bluffs RegBri, and on the upper left here, if you click on map, that will take us to the map page. And two of the things we're working on is have both a interactive map and a printer-friendly map. So if you were to click on the printer-friendly, the map, if the mouse will behave, will take you to a downloadable PDF of the city map. So we have a front welcome page, and then an overview that kind of takes you through kind of the event area bird's eye view. Now this is a little bit out of date. This will be updated tomorrow because the tire dip has been removed from the map, and that takes us also to a detailed view of the event overview area. And one thing we wanted to add to this to make it a little bit easier for riders out in the field is we have an interactive map. So if we were to click on this, this takes you to a web application similar to the surplus property application, and shows you a live interactive map of all of the features that you would see on the printable map, which you can kind of zoom in, zoom out, get more detailed information for what you would see on that printable map. And like what the mayor was saying, if say you were part of the pork belly charter and you wanted to know where exactly you were going to be camping at, is you click on the query application and type in your name. So that would be pork belly. I mentioned this to Brandon earlier. He thought I was making that one up, but that is an actual charter. Right. So you click on that to apply,
Yeah.
take you to exactly where that charter is on the map and
Oh, that's
highlight it
cool.
for you.
Nice. Yeah, that's really cool.
So,
Yeah, that's neat. That'll be super helpful for people that aren't around in this area, then they'll be able to find stuff a lot easier, I would think.
that's the idea.
Yeah, that's really good.
So,
Nice.
okay, well, thank you for your time.
Amazing.
Who's going next? All right.
That's really cool.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Review agenda, anything on the consent agenda?
Just one item, Vincent said that he doesn't have the waivers on the Kimball Park, that the builder didn't bring in, and wanted to just postpone it, but I think if we bifurcate that and just pull it out, then we could vote on it subject to him getting those waivers, that way it doesn't have to come back to us.
Okay, yeah.
as soon as he's got them, he's good to move forward on that, so.
He gets waivers that are acceptable to him. We can delegate that to him, I assume.
Just pull it out and vote on separate.
Yeah, cause we never really see the waivers anyway, it's just one of their checklists that they have to have, so. If you guys are alright with it, I'll pull it out and we'll do it that way, and that way he doesn't have to wait for another meeting and.
Yep.
Yep,
I'm good with that.
that's a good idea.
Other stuff on the consent agenda. Anything on the public hearing?
On, 4B, I met with the developer and, the Fairmont Park Neighborhood Association last Wednesday night. And I mainly was there to listen, I didn't talk much, believe it or not. And, they had a good meeting, the neighborhood, there were a lot of things discussed. He talked about his background, they talked about theirs. They came to common ground on that. It was very friendly. I was really impressed with both the neighborhood and the developer. And the way it was left at the end, he took to heart their concerns. One of their main concerns was that and I hate this phrase because it's pejorative, but it's the most descriptive way to describe it, shorthand way, is the cookie cutter idea. And that doesn't mean something's bad or not aesthetically pleasing. It means that things are alike, right? And they had some legitimate concerns. I think that they're on that neighborhood's one of the 5 residential neighborhoods on the National Register of Historic Places, and you can lose that distinction if too much of your neighborhood changes outside of whatever character of the era it's meant to be from, right? Even if it's really nice. So their concern was they really wanted to see some superficial, not super expensive, but superficial changes to the facade, at least every other one, because as the neighborhood happens, it tended to have Victorian, so 1850s through about 1900 or so. And over time, people sold their side yards, and so they fill in. So as it happens, it's about every other one. Victorian arts and crafts, Victorian crafts. So early 20th century, about every other one. So they asked if the facade could change just a little bit. It wouldn't fool anybody, nor did they expect it. I thought they were really reasonable. They said somebody's going to be able to tell that they were built now, and probably by the same developer. And they were really reasonable, I thought. They said, we don't have a problem with that. It looks well done. We just want it to be enough different to respect the fact that none of our houses look exactly alike. And the developer was very receptive to that and said he would come up with new conceptual drawings. He was going to try his best. He was leaving on a mission trip for a personal trip of his, or his church, as I recall. And he was going to ask the architect to come up with new conceptual, not blueprints in the neighborhood. Again, to be fair, didn't expect that. Just kind of conceptual, because it goes along with that third point, I think it is, in the staff write-up about how there's that current architectural drawings where all of them would look the same. They wanted some assurance in writing that they'd look different, not exact blueprint, but that he'd be committed in writing to them being different. And he was very agreeable to that, and hoped that his architect would get that done. And I said, well, there's a holiday in there, and maybe that won't happen. And he didn't really want to have a delay, to be fair, to put forward his position. But I did tell him that, if we didn't have that, just speaking for myself, I said, I'd probably move to delay it because I want that to be part of the understanding and writing. And he didn't want to delay. He didn't voice any major objection. I said, will that put you off the timeline? And he said no. And he was really hopeful he'd get it. It hasn't come in, and I don't fault him. There's a holiday there. And I'm sure his architect had other work to get to. One business day in between. And so my recommendation, though I think there's another view on it. My recommendation is that, especially since it won't hurt him, and it's not a matter of trust. I just think we ought to have it in writing for everybody, just as a matter of best practice. Because again, let's say we don't put that in writing, and I suppose we could also say subject to receipt of that, but I think this is a little bit different, because I think that puts staff in an impossible position. It's like subject to the receipt of acceptable plans. It's a bit different than did you get the waiver or not. It's to the architectural plans. And again, I don't want to micromanage it. And the neighborhood was really reasonable. They didn't want to micromanage it. They just wanted some conceptual so that he knew up front what they were expecting, and then they seemed quite agreeable to support it. I won't speak for them, but they seemed very agreeable. And he really wanted their support. So I just think we need to give him more time.
And I know he had spoken with me, he would prefer we not delay it again, plus I feel like we've delayed it, I mean, it's kind of just ongoing. And in here on 3, it does say, final design approval will be determined by community development. It even states it has to be, has to fit in with the historic district. My concern for one thing is that, and I'm in the neighborhood too, so I totally understand how it all works, is that we can get too critical of it, and then it's gonna end up, this project's just not gonna go forward, because who knows, I mean, and no, I'm not criticizing, because I know that, I get it, it's our neighborhood, but we can't pick at it too, I mean, there's only so much work, we've given input, he's taking it, hopefully he's gonna follow. I would be fine with putting some language in here that states, there needs to be that different architecture, but I don't want it delayed again based on, because I don't want us, normally wouldn't do this anyway, but I don't want it to be where we have to critique and decide if his new plans fit what we personally think is, unique enough. Because this to me is a great project, it's gonna add value, we've had these lots sitting vacant for such a long time, we hardly ever have anybody that's gotten even this far along. So, I think because he has spoken with me too, I think he's definitely willing to do it, to comply. And Brandon does have to still sign off on it, so this is not the be-all final, us approving this sale tonight doesn't mean that he can put anything here, so let's get approved. So personally, but that's just me personally, I'm fine with going forward with it, either putting language in there about that has to have the change of, facade for a couple of them, or just making sure that, and Brandon, you can add in however you wanna do it, but I would prefer not to keep delaying it.
We have precedent, however, for, so I disagree with you there respectfully. Our precedent is that we do actually, for all developments of any age, we do have the architectural design. The example that comes to mind would be the modern one, very nicely done at Nash Boulevard. We required where the old Holiday Inn used to be, we required the architectural standards before we allowed that to go forward. And that's not a historic neighborhood, so I don't think we're doing anything special. We're just respecting the existing neighborhood in general, that something's to go into. I just, for anybody, I think to be fair, if we do it for him because we like him and we trust him, and then we don't do it for somebody else, we're gonna open ourselves up to attack from certain folks and their attorneys that we're playing favorites.
Well, no, I don't think we should not require, I'm saying we did require, it's in here, and it's part of this as far as the brand has to approve of it for it. I'm saying normally we wouldn't make them keep coming back to us with revisions.
Well, normally they'd have it for us by now, no
But
criticism.
they do have it in here,
Well, but the one they have in here now would delist the neighborhood from the National Register of Historic Places.
It will for sure.
No, what
Well, I
it's
can't
saying.
guarantee that for sure, no, to be fair, but it would very likely lead to its delisting because it's too cookie cutter, and they didn't do that in the 19th century.
I would just like to ask, if you do decide to go forward, tonight, that you be as descriptive as possible for if that's what the wish is, that you put it on community development to approve the design. If you could have as much description in there as possible for me to go on, because I don't want people mad at me either, be it the neighborhood or the architect or the developer or the council, the mayor.
And that's a fair point, and I'll just
I'm
be.
in a difficult position too.
Yeah, I am in my day job, I understand. My concern is the neighborhood has come a long way, I'll put this very diplomatically, because I think I really appreciative of them. They've come a long way to being very reasonable and not wanting to micromanage. I mean, you could get super purist, and in my own life I would. Like, I don't use Phillips screws because they weren't invented until 1932 on anything that shows on the house. My house is 1890. So they're nowhere near that level of prescription, right? But if it's foreseen, if it's perceived rather, even though I don't think it would be, in fact, but if it's perceived as we rushed it through without that being in writing, then I don't know if they and the other 4 neighborhoods in the future would be so accommodating. Right now, we would not be rewarding their reasonableness, and I think in good faith to them. If we don't, they're going to come and be more prescriptive, and I probably would be with them, to be really honest with you.
And I'm not discounting with the neighborhood, but he didn't have to meet with the neighborhood at all. I mean, he doesn't have to. Doesn't have to take their opinion.
But I can just tell you from my
He did.
perspective, if he didn't, I probably would have been on board. And the
Right,
reason
I'm
is-
saying he has done that, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but and he's not afraid with having it
in writing. He'd prefer it be done now. I'm sure, again, I'm casting no aspersions on him. I doubt his architect in one business day had time to do it. I just think it needs to be done, or we open up a precedent of, if in the future we just call it good, and you will have neighborhoods coming and saying, what the heck? I agreed to be reasonable, and you just said, yeah, it'll be good.
So when you say have it in writing, can't we just put it in our
Right.
description?
Well, to be fair to him, if we do that, then we have delegated to him the authority to decide whether the plan is uncookie cutter enough, if you will.
And I understand, I think
That's tricky.
what you're trying to describe is, it is a
That's
little,
tricky.
it's a little tricky
It's-
to describe in words what is aesthetically pleasing to the eye.
It's different than
Well,
did the
it's
guy get the
personal too,
waiver or
that's
not.
part of
That
it.
is an objective, you can prove it, it's demonstrable fact. Here, again, I don't intend to micromanage it, but I think you put Brandon and his staff in an awful fix. If you say, does it meet enough of a standard, I think that should be on us, because if people don't like how we vote, they can vote us out, they can't vote staff out. I don't think that's fair to put them in that position, that'd be us ducking our responsibility to vote up or down on something. I just don't think that's best practice, and that'd be true of any neighborhood. I think you gotta take into account, not just the historical ones, but and like I say, we've done it for the other neighborhoods. And, you know, I'd have a hard time saying to this neighborhood, whether I live there or not, you know, it was good enough to trust him there, but it wasn't on Nash Boulevard or any other place we built. He said a delay wouldn't hurt him. I get he'd prefer it now, I'd prefer it now too, but I just don't know what the rush would be.
Well, and honestly, there was a delay in his meeting from the first meeting that we delayed it, and the second one to actually setting up the meeting with the neighbors, so that has made it harder. I guess I would wanna be careful. We ended up with a house in our neighborhood, it's a split foyer on Oakland Avenue, I mean, come on. And there's some cheap gingerbread up in the corners and saying it was supposed to fit in, and it doesn't, and it's a sore thumb, and it's hugely noticeable. You don't just not notice that. So, I would hesitate to move forward without knowing, you know, what that plan was. I actually really like what he's planning on doing. I like
That's
it a
what
lot.
I like the.
I do
So I don't know, you know, what his intentions will be on it, you know, how to make those changes, whether it's just a different type of siding, you know, on the dormer areas, or, you know, I just don't know, so.
He had some ideas, but again, he's, as he put rather reasonably, he's not an architect, and none of us, well, with one exception, in the neighborhood is an architect. She does have one of her degrees in that, yeah, I think it'd be better to just wait and have it.
We don't have any indication, maybe his architect would show up tonight and bring it, I mean, there's no reason.
I don't know either way, but he did say he was gonna try very hard to have it before our meeting, so I suppose that's possible. At this point, I'd say it's probably unlikely, but it could always happen, but I think it'd just be better, and again, there's some folks who really wanted to be more prescriptive. And we're convinced through a lot of reasonable discussion, to be reasonable, and I think we need to meet them in good faith.
But it's not gonna be a situation where then we take that back to the neighbor and they say, that's just.
That's what I'm
not good
concerned
enough."
with. That's
Even
what
if,
I'm
well, I
really-
made really clear to them that if they did that, and I can only speak for myself, obviously, I'd say if in the end it meets a process, and it's legally enforceable, similar to our Con Agri precedent. Remember, I pushed for that to be put into writing, because it's not whether I trust anybody, it's just, you know, probably I don't as a lawyer, but I just think it's easier over time, 20 years from now, people are gonna remember it differently. The neighborhood's gonna think he promised more, and he's gonna think he promised less, and they're both gonna honestly be mistaken. It's just better to write it, but
I just
yeah,
wanna make sure
I've
we're
not a
not gonna
veto.
go
If they
down.
come back and it's sufficient enough, I've not made my vote contingent on whether they support it or not. So if in the end, I think it should be up to me, speaking again for myself, if in the end I think it's sufficient and the neighborhood doesn't like it, then I have to take that hit and vote my conscience. It'd be easier for me to pass it to, and I'm not suggesting that's what Melissa suggested, but it'd be easier for me, frankly, to just pass it to the administration and make it their problem, and I think it should be our vote.
Is there a level of change, like, is there 3 different things that he has to change, like, to hit, you know what I mean? Cause it's personal, like, how much you want
Conceptual.
changed, or
No,
Right,
it's
that's
she
what-
conceptual.
wants
what I'm
change, or I want
concerned
change, and
about,
that,
is-
again, I just wanna understand if there is a level, like,
Are we
okay, you changed this front door,
Right,
or
that's my
this,
concern.
To me, what things they talked about were just at a really high level because they didn't want to micromanage it. Again, they weren't telling what kind of screws you could use based on the age of the neighborhood, right? So it was,
Hammer nail or?
no, so it really was a situation of, there'd be a slight variance either in the pitch or the dormer style or the window style. Cause you know, there's a major difference, maybe you know, maybe you don't know. There's a major difference, and they're all available off the shelf at all the
Yeah,
big box stores
I don't.
today.
I'm not.
Well, like for example, a Victorian window versus an arts and craft window are remarkably different. And the cool thing about 2019 is they're all available at Menards or Home Depot or Lowe's or pick your store. It's not like 20 years ago where you had to have them made by
I
hand.
could see that they were different if they were on front of me, but I wouldn't know which one was which arts and crafts or Victoria. I wouldn't.
Well,
know.
the main example would be, you know, the traditional windows that have those little squares, they're divided up. That's very colonial because they couldn't make the glass any bigger in the 18th century. And the Victorians got rid of that. So any Victorian houses who have that,
And you want which one? Just
well,
to be fair.
the Victorian would not have that because by that point in time they were able to make glass big enough. And so they wanted to show that they were modern and had money, just like we do with houses today. So that the fad. So that's one example. But mainly the main difference they wanted was maybe a slight variance in the roof pitch, which he was agreeable to. Because arts and crafts, the roofs get shallower. Victorians are really tall.
Steep.
Yep, steep. And not having all the garage doors match. You know, like there's 5 different versions at every big box store of old looking garage doors. Just mix it up. They didn't even care which ones, what colors. They just didn't want them all to be the same. And he was agreeable because that doesn't cost him anymore. And you know, with that sort of just for me, what I want to see, regardless of what the neighborhood thinks, in the end, when I have to vote, I want to see that there's some statement in there general to the effect of there'll be a difference between them, and they'll be sympathetic to the historic nature of the neighborhood. That's it. I don't need to see an exact, this is the one I'm going to buy, and here's the serial number. But none of that. Right now, what's in writing and what we'd be approving is they all literally match. And nobody's agreeable to that today. So I don't want to pass something that doesn't match reality.
I would say nobody, I mean,
Well, the developer does it, the neighborhood doesn't, so.
no, I mean, I'm fine with that, but
I
I
don't know if
just,
that's fair.
what my concern is, I just don't want this to become another month or two because we're going back and forth back. I know what I'm saying, because that could
I
easily
I
happen.
give you my word, I won't participate in that. If someone
Okay,
wants to
that could
do
very
that,
easily happen, because I know the neighborhood and I know
I
it's,
give you my word.
you know, your opinion on this is gonna be totally different than Mike's. If he's gonna see something, he might think it's fine, you're still gonna think, so I just don't want us to keep, you know, every 2 weeks, we're then sending it back to him again, because we wanna see a few more things, and then he's gonna say, I'm not gonna do this, and then we've lost out on this opportunity.
That's totally fair. I give you my word. Again, as much as I'm a purist in my own life, because it's my money, right? My house. I'm not, I've always said you gotta be really reasonable and allow things that maybe you wouldn't like. You gotta be reasonable. And that's the majority view of that neighborhood, and the developer was agreeable. And if eventually it comes down to people getting really, really prescriptive, I'm not gonna support that. You have my word.
That was my biggest concern, is just letting it
That's
keep
fair.
going back and forth, and then
That's
it's
fair.
gonna get to a point where it's not gonna be worth it, even for him to have to keep paying someone to redo it, he's gonna say no, I mean.
Well, at this point, it's conceptual. Again, it's just the concept that
But
they're
there's
gonna be
still a
different.
cost to each time he
Oh,
says,
fair enough.
I mean,
And no matter what, it's gonna, the final design approval's
still
on
gonna be
community
the
development, no matter how you look at it, whether we change it or we don't, correct?
As that's written today, and so
Yeah, I
like
mean,
I
that's-
said,
that's what it
if
usually
you
is.
wanna make some clarifying comments, please do, because then this project will have a higher level of scrutiny, and if, you know, if we miss something like windows, and other things, then they'll be upset with me, because ultimately I approved it, so they'll come looking for me. So, if I could have very clear.
But normally, you do the final approval, though, correct? Normally, in a development, community development is the final signing off on, I mean, I get
If
this is
it's-
different, but normally.
If it's already passed through city council, et cetera, and we're just, they're getting the
All of
building
the-
permit.
We've gotten pretty prescriptive. I remember the Nash Boulevard one had 3 pages of conditions, even down to the exact percentage of how much the fronting had to be stone or brick, and what shades of color, and what style, and even what type of mortar, and the color of the mortar. And that was a modern neighborhood where frankly that doesn't matter, at least from that historical point of losing a designation. And at that point, it just had to be pretty, and whether people who want a new house will buy it. But we got super prescriptive because we wanted the neighborhood around it was concerned that something would be built that wouldn't fit into their neighborhood. So they wanted stuff that fit. And I think we should do that within reason with every neighborhood, especially when you're talking about, this isn't just like one house, it's a whole block.
It'll have impact. If it's a large enough project, it will impact the neighborhood.
And I'm very hopeful that this, I hope I'm not giving the impression I don't want to see this succeed. I desperately want to see this succeed in our older neighborhoods. Because otherwise they'll die.
Right now that whole block is just, it's not good because of all the big
No.
homes, and it's just made the other homes go down, so, I mean, that's just my biggest concern, is not losing out on.
That's
Not
great.
over small, I mean, it's big to some, but small others is great to be.
Well, yeah, and as I said before, you know, when one of the colleagues needs more time, you know, or needs more to be able to make that decision, I usually am fine with postponement unless we're gonna lose a project. And I don't know that we'll lose a project over a 2-week delay according to what he's told me. But I am with Melissa on this. I really and truly don't want this to become I want more gingerbread, I want more this, I want more that, 'cause
I agree with you. I agree with you on that. I really
I'm
think.
no expert in,
Yeah, next meeting and then that, yeah.
but I am an expert in home construction, and we're getting to the point of the year where he wants to get it closed before it gets cold.
Right.
yeah.
I think that's fair. You know, and, yeah, I think as long as 2 weeks, if he gets the conceptual, I mean, if it's not done in 2 weeks, I'm still stuck, the ball's in his court at this point. You know.
Well, if that's the case, then I don't know that we should delay.
Well, then we're incentivizing a delay, it's kind of like, you know, if you never turn it in, then we won't make you. And that's not what he's doing. I don't want to straight that precedent.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he'll turn something.
I'm sure
I
they will.
really do.
I really think that's a moot point.
I'm okay with 2 weeks with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like
That's
that.
good.
Just because you're asking, that's odd.
I appreciate that. I want to encourage those
Did he
neighborhoods to
say
be
when he'd be
reasonable.
back from his mission? I know,
I
he
don't
told
know,
us
a
he'd be
couple
gone.
weeks, but
Typically, those are at least a
10
week.
days or so.
Yeah.
I'll try to reach out to him by phone and email.
You may not have
Presumably,
one.
where he's at, he can still get the service. I would assume, look, if he didn't ask the guy to do it, he's told me he's gonna do it, and again, I have no reason to say that whatsoever. If he did do that, that would cause me to doubt his sincerity, which then causes me to think, I don't.
I
do
bet you
business
guess
with
that he
anybody.
could-
I'm sure that's not the case.
He probably couldn't even get a hold of anybody. All
third?
those offices
Right,
were like
that's what
skeleton crews on Fridays, so.
I'm sure his request is in, and it will get done, and I'm convinced of it. He struck me as a very honest man.
Well, let's wait 2 more weeks then.
I appreciate that.
Other questions on the public hearings? Anything on the ordinance or the resolutions?
I want to thank staff for updating the draft purchasing policy, putting in some standards on, it's on page 154 of the packet about the objective criteria by which they'll allow people to make purchases that exceed their spending authority. The one potential thing I didn't see in there that would probably be a good idea to add is there's no indication that this has to be documented anywhere, what level somebody's at, and if they're allowed to exceed it in a particular instance. That should be kind of written down somewhere, because the old HIPAA bus theory, or an auditor.
So I actually took out that sentence about exceeding completely out of it. That was intended to relate to the P card policy, which that is in there because everyone initially, if they're issued a P card, it's a standard limit of $5,000. So if someone needs to exceed that spending, that's what that was intended to reference, not the spending authority. I don't think there's ever an instance where, I couldn't come up with one where someone should exceed their spending authority without receiving permission from their boss. Therefore, it was completely removed, and it shouldn't have to be documented because it should not happen.
Well, but this allows it to happen. It
Where?
says, page 161, the clean version of it. It says on the third paragraph at the bottom, individual may not make any purchases that exceed his or her assigned spending authorities.
Since they've been on.
Oh, excuse me. Oh, I did misread that, thank you.
That's okay. Yeah, I went back after our last discussion and
No, I
checked, we
misread
have
that,
an
I
instance where
apologize.
they could exceed and they
Okay.
should not do that without prior approval, so.
Okay. Do we keep a list somewhere what level somebody's been at?
Yes,
Could we say that in the policy, just add a line?
sure.
Because, you know, cause if ever like an auditor comes in and questions it, this person spent this, proving me they had this authority.
Yep.
Well, Joe says he did.
And that has been, provided for the auditor's packet, but
Oh.
yes, if
It'd just be
you'd
good
like
to
add
have
any
it.
settings, that would be wonderful.
I just think contemporaneously noting what somebody's level at, and then, cause then you'll know on November 1st, he was in level 3, but then next February 15th, he got bumped up to level 4. Then,
Sure.
then if ever there's a purchase question, you can look back and say, well, he had that authority as of that date, cause it was written down at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
As opposed to, well, I remember it, and I'm pretty sure I would've given him that authority, you know him, he's honest, he would've followed it. Auditors are gonna look at that and give you a big negative
So
finding.
we have that in place now.
Yes, so purchasing maintains that list if you'd like to add in. a
Yeah, I'd just
sentence
like-
to that effect,
I'd
maintained
just
by
like to say that the
Yep.
policy requires the list to be kept.
Yep,
The auditor will like that too, in my experience. But I really like,
With that language as amendment.
okay,
cause I really might not be here next time.
I understand.
Well, we can do it tonight.
No, and I
We'll
greatly
submit it
appreciate,
tonight, yeah.
this is great work, and, that was just some thoughts I'd had from personal experience when auditors dig into things I've done, frankly.
Yep.
Um,
Yep, it's maintained by me, so however you wanna work that in purchasing.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And we love seeing you. Here's hoping you don't make it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you have to sit in the front row. Other, questions on the resolution or on the ordinance or the resolutions? Anything on the applications for permits and cancellations?
Speaking of permits and fires and all that, though, do we need to discuss? I don't think I see that guy here. I know Jody had mentioned in the email today.
Yeah, if anything's ever issued, so.
Okay,